so we were actually doing exception handling, right? So exception handling, when we were talking about exception handling, I said there are two kind of errors, right? So one is when you have a system or an application error where you go ahead and your system is not working, or any of the connecting parameters like your Internet Explorer or your Excel or your applications, all those things are not opening. Then at that time you're going to catch it as a system or an application exception. Anything that is wrong with the data, then we are going to talk about a business exception. Okay, so a data that is coming incorrectly, that is called a business exception. So whenever you have a data that is you're getting in the right format, but the data that you're supposed to receive in it is an incorrect exception, I mean incorrect data, then you're going to talk it as then you're going to call it as business exception. But in the case where you're getting the structure of the data, the format of the data itself is incorrect, means not the format, the where you're supposed to receive employee ID, you're receiving and a different column, then at that time you will receive a system exception. Okay, so this is what we were talking. And then we said we are going to catch the exception, and we are going to go ahead and continue with the handling the exception scenarios or the error scenarios, so that the project will not stop, so that the project behavior will be continuously getting altered as and how when the errors occur, or as and how when the invalid scenarios occur, the project or the robot will learn from your the alternate method that you have coded, so that it will go and do that particular work, and it will come back to the proper proper flow when it has resolved that particular error, or when it has gone to that error handling and back to the next data, it will go and do it in the same flow as what you have coded. So this is what we said. Another important parameter that we have as a developer we might be requiring is the debug information. Okay, so for some of us who are from the background, from the development background, we may be aware, but for people who are not from the development background, debugging is an option where a developer will be able to see what actually you have done in your code, or where exactly the coding is having a problem. Suppose you are having an issue, or your coding is, it doesn't throw any error, but it just says it doesn't throw any error, but it just takes a lot of time to execute. So in those particular time, you can go ahead and see where exactly you cannot go and see what is happening, right? There is an opportunity where a debugging option allows you to actually identify and remove errors, so that the project will be able to run successfully. So if there's a part which takes a lot of time, you can go inside that particular piece of boxes and the syntaxes, and you can go ahead and see what is actually taking a lot of time. If there's a lot of time that is occupied in a for each loop, then you can actually go, when you're executing using the actual run, the entire project, you won't be able to see what exactly happens inside the for each loop, right? The program starts and it ends within fraction of seconds, but there is a delay, means you will be able to loop through even the for each loop, and you will be able to see what data goes inside which loop. So even that kind of an extent of information you will be able to see. So that is what we do it in the debug option. So debugging is nothing but the process of identifying and removing errors that actually the project encounters, so that it can function properly. Okay, so as a developer only you're going to use the debug option, right? So usually we have a debug tab which is available. So you have 4 options. So the similar thing will be in your design tab also. You have 3 options. Here also you're going to have the same 3 options. So one is run file. So if you have multiple files, okay, you're going to run it, means it will not start from the main file, it will just run the particular XAML file. Then debug is the current project that you want to debug, so the entire project will be debugged, which means you will be able to see what is happening at each step. And then run is going to be from the main file, it will run, so the entire project will be executed. Okay, so what do we do in our debug? In our debug, we actually have a particular phase. Say suppose I'm going to debug. Okay, I'm going to debug this particular it will execute. Sorry. Yeah, suppose I'm going to execute. Okay, suppose I'm going to debug. So let me just go. I have something called a breakpoint. A breakpoint is nothing but a point where you're able to say, okay, I have 10 steps. And in the 10 steps, I think my 4 steps are working fine. I guess my fifth step only is the wrong step, or it is taking a lot of time, means you can go and set a breakpoint at the fifth step. So what it will do, the first four steps it will execute on its own, and then on the fifth step it will come and give you the control back. So it will come and pause for you to take the control so that you can see what is actually happening inside the fifth step. Okay, so let me put a breakpoint on the second step. So which means open browser will happen only from the data scraping, it will come and stop. So I'm going to put a breakpoint. Right, so when I do a debug, what is going to happen is wherever you can create how many ever debugs that breakpoints that is there in your project. So you can go ahead and see what is actually there in your particular what is actually happening in that particular zone of the activity. Okay, so if I'm going to, so there is a debug file, so which means this file will be debug. If you want to debug the entire project, you can go and debug the entire project. So let me go ahead and debug. So which means this particular operation will not wait for my control. So it will come and wait only when the data scraping is coming, right? So it is going to do the open browser, log in, and then it is going to come back to the data scraping and it is going to give me the control back. Okay, I think, right. So if you see, the control is back onto the data scraping. So the moment you came here, you're able to see the data scraping. The control has been given back to you, right? As a developer, now you will be able to see what is actually happening. So wherever you keep the breakpoint, you will be able to see all the information that is happening. The control will be given back to the developer, right? So this is your breakpoint window where you can see all the list of breakpoints. I have kept only one breakpoint, but in a project as a developer, you might be keeping a lot of breakpoints, right? So usually we do this debug, and usually it will be coming like as a developer, we might be doing for every page that we develop. That is a different scenario. But usually we are going to use this when we are integrating the project. Okay, everything will be working, but there might be a delay. Everything might be working, but there is a different format of data that is going. So at that time, you might be using, the person who is integrating will be using the debug option. Only then we'll be able to find. Without the debug option, most of the cases we won't be able to integrate the code. Okay, so we use the debug option. So you have a uh, you have a breakpoints window, and then you have a local or a watch or an immediate window. All these things are your your data that is flowing through the code. You can see your actual data that is flowing through your code. Then you have your properties, whatever panel that we saw before, that is going to be the same thing. Okay, then we have an output and a call stack. A call stack is going to be what is the process of what is your execution flow doing. So that is your call stack. So like what should I say, it just shows the stack of the information from which is being called. Okay, so which means from the try catch, from the flowchart there is a try catch, from the try catch there is a sequence, from the sequence there is a data scraping. So if you're going above it, there'll be how your program is getting executed. Okay, then we have a breakpoints window. The output panel remains the same as for every other project, right? Now when I'm going to do, so data scraping I won't be able to. So here if I go and see, okay, I'm loading it into a variable called extract data table. In reality, when I'm using the control F5, which is the run option, I won't be able to see what is there inside my extract data table, right? Unless or until I write it or I put a output data table, right? So until or unless I won't be able to do, but I will be able to see the information in the immediate window. When you go ahead, if you want to say a particular variable name, you want to see what is the content of a variable name, you can type that particular information and you can give an enter. So obviously you will be able to see the information. Okay, now at this particular time it will say it is just a data table, or it will say it is not having any data. Okay, sorry, I gave the wrong information. Okay, it is not having any data. Why it is not having any data? Because the data table has not been loaded yet. Okay, we have not executed this particular step. Okay, if you have not executed, if it is just a variable name, then it will show it has not been. What are the variables that we have? Only dt. Okay, so if there are any variables, then the variables will say it has not been allocated, or it is null, it has not come to that particular place. So all those things you will be able to see. So only when you cross this particular step, the variable will be loaded, right? So that is what I'm meaning. So once the variable is loading, then you will be able to go ahead and see what the content of the variable is. So here I don't want this particular thing. I know data scraping, what will get loaded. So I'm just going to go ahead. So how do you actually go into these particular options, or how do you actually go inside these particular syntaxes? So here is where we have all the information. So you have something called a step into, then you have a step over, and you have a step out. So what is a step into? A step into means it will go inside the project. So what it will do is it will debug the activities one at a time. So which means this is the activity. If you have written some piece of code inside it, it will go and debug. Okay, debug in the sense it will go inside that particular code. So when this action is triggered, what happens is it will highlight the activity. Okay, and if there are any particular, if you're doing an invoke workflow, okay, and there's an invoke workflow here, which means it's opening another file. So what will happen when the moment when you do step into, it will go inside the invoke workflow and it will open that particular file also, and it will go inside that file and it will start debugging. Okay, so that is what a step into will be. So it will go inside each of the thing and it will do a debugging, which means it will go and do one step after the other. Okay, so next one is going to be a step over action. A step over action is not going to be like, it does not open the current container. So here, if you have a step over, you will not, if this is, consider this is an invoke workflow. Okay, in step into, what happens, it will step into that particular invoke workflow. So there will be the new XAML file that will be opened, right? But whereas a step over file, what happens is this particular activity will not be opened. It will go to the next activity. It means it will jump to the next activity and it will start highlighting from there. So which means if I do a step over now, it will jump to the, it won't do a, see, if I do a step over now, it is jumping, it is not going inside. It is jumping from that activity. It will go to the next activity. It's just jumping from, it is stepping over. So it is not, even if you do it on an invoke workflow, it will not go inside that particular file. So from here, it will go inside. So if you have this particular activity, if it is an invoke workflow, then this particular activity again will not be opened. Okay, so a step over is nothing but you just want to, so if I need to do a step over for a for each loop, it will not go inside the information. If you do a step into, it will go inside this particular flow. A step over means it will highlight this particular activity and it will just jump to the next activity. So if I do a step over, why it is going inside? Oh, I gave the wrong data now the other day. Okay, I created the error, right? Okay. Okay, this was, I manually created errors to show, so that is why it's not coming. Fine. So it will jump to from one activity to another activity. So usually that is what a step over will be doing. A step out is you are inside a for each loop, or you're inside a invoke workflow, and you feel that you're inside a different XAML file. You feel like, okay, this is not the place that the error is coming out. Then you can simply do a step out. So it will just come out of that particular thing and it will start executing the next set of activities. So what it will do, it will step out and pass the execution at that particular container, and it will complete. So if suppose you are doing the step out, you're doing this loop, at the fifth loop you're doing a step out. So what will happen? The 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 loop will be continuing, and then it will continue on its own, and then it will go back to the next activity. So that is what will be happening. So it will execute the rest set of activities until the next activity, and then it will until the next container, and then it will go ahead and start with your whatever debugging that you want to do. So you can use any of the three options and you can go ahead and see whether you want to step into a particular thing. So if you feel that there is an error, then you have to step into that particular thing. If you feel that there are no errors at this particular thing, then you can do a step over or a step out. Okay, so that is as you do the particular debugging and as you practice, or anywhere you have an issue, you will be able to go ahead. So here we were having some thing, right? So if you want to see what was row of tax ID, you can simply go ahead and say what was row of tax ID dot toString. You will be able to see what was the content of that particular thing. It says that particular data was not there, right? Okay, I think they've changed something in the community edition. The IntelliSense is not working. The IntelliSense is working only like this. When I type .toString and all, it's not coming. I don't know if it is the case with you or just with my community edition. Off late, I'm just for the past 3 or 4 days, I'm seeing that issue. So now if you see the extract data table, this is the information that it has got. So instead of tax ID, it should be vendor tax ID. Okay, that is why it's showing that particular error. Okay, so we have given the, it's not that column name, it is vendor tax ID. Right? So what actually happens is you can go ahead and see the content of your data, whatever. So if you want to say what is your data table dot rows dot count, you can simply go and say dot. Okay, now my IntelliSense is working. I don't know why it's not working at times. Okay, so there are 100 rows inside it, right? So you can go ahead and view your data as such. So if you feel the 100th row is having an issue, you can execute the loop on its own. Only for the 100th data, you can come inside. So you can do multiple step out or step over or step in, and you can go ahead and execute your particular stuff. Okay, so this is what we do in our debugging. So in your immediate window or in your locals, if you want to watch a particular activity, you can simply go and say right click and you can add a watch. Okay, so here a particular information will be coming. Your locals window is nothing but what information has the current activity of execution. So this is your extract data table. What is these are the variables that we have defined. Where are we right now? We are inside the for each row. So this is the information that we are seeing. So there's a display name called sequence. So you will be able to see what are all your information that is there. So in your local window also you will be able to see. So if you want to go and add, if you want to go ahead and say add to watch, you will be able to see it in the watch window. So which means the content of the information, everything will be given. So if I say view more, whatever is your content and this is the data that is actually coming from the page. You will be able to take this particular data and you will be able to verify, okay, this is the thing. So this at runtime, when you're going to execute it using just the control F5, you won't be able to do all these options. That is what is the option of debug. Okay, then we have something called a retry, ignore, and a restart. So retry, ignore, and a restart is nothing but if you have an error. So what is happening is we are at this particular thing. I can simply go and retry it from. If I go and retry it, it will just retry that particular container. Okay, there's an error. You have corrected the error. At runtime, you'll be able to correct the error. So you can go ahead and retry that particular option. If you have an error, and at this point we had an error, right? So if you have, I'm doing a step into. Okay, somewhere you are having an error. So now it is doing a logout. Okay, let me re-execute. Right. So we are going with the debug. Oh, I clicked on login. So here we have shifted the focus back, right? So here I'm just going a step into, so it will go inside the data scraping. Now it is going and doing each activity and it is coming out. So if I do a step over, it will just jump to the next activity. So it will highlight the main data scraping. See, it is highlighting the previous activities and it is just jumping to the next activity. Okay, so this is your for each. Here we had some error. Okay, I'm not sure in the community edition if it works. So there is an error here. You can simply go and there's a retry which is enabled. So you can correct this particular error and you can do a retry also. If you ignore, it will just do an ignore. So if you do an ignore, I'm just ignoring it, that particular. So before this, if it would have gone to the exception, the catch block, right? Now, since I ignored that particular error, it is going to the next information. Similarly, if you want to restart a particular option also, you can go ahead and restart. So you have an error and you want to just go ahead and restart from the beginning, means you can go ahead and restart the entire debug operation for the first activity of the project. Okay. So now you can do the same thing. So if I go and I'm doing a step into, okay, there's an error because this particular information again is incorrect. Okay. Right. Why this particular error is there is because we created a exception the other day. Just to show you an example, I created an exception. Okay. So from the display all windows, I directly went to invoices page and I was trying to, so that is why it is throwing an error. Now it will be executing perfectly. So debug. So the data scraping, we have come back to this particular stuff. You can go ahead and step into, or if you want to do a step over. So that particular activity, we did not go inside it. That particular activity got executed and now it will be coming to the next activity. So if you want to do a step out, it will just directly go on to the next activity. Okay, if I need to do a step into, it will go and execute. So this is the, so here at the second loop, I just want to do a step out, means it will just move to the next activity. There is an error that we created, so it is creating. I'm doing a step out here. It is processing the next set of data and it can't, since it threw the error, it just it went to the catch section and it did. Okay, so, we have created a program like that. That's why it's executing like that. Okay, otherwise this is not having a problem. The program is, since it was error handling program, we have created errors. Okay, so this is what was our actual program. So this is what we do: retry, ignore, and a restart. Restart will start from the first activity. Okay, and then we have something called a focus. A focus is nothing but you want to focus on the current breakpoint, or you want to focus on a particular activity that you, when you're navigating through the process. So that time you can have a focus there. A focus execution point will be there, so you can focus more on that particular activity. So that is your focus. Here in your breakpoint window, you will say show breakpoint panel will show all the breakpoints. You can add or remove your information. So you can add information, you can go and delete this particular information. So what is the thing that you want to do? You can go and set up a breakpoint, how many times you want to do that particular activity. All those things you will be able to go ahead and do in this particular breakpoint panel. Okay, and this is going to be your toggle breakpoint. Toggle breakpoint is nothing but when you want to remove your breakpoints, right? So at that time you can go and remove it. So then you have a slow step. A slow step is, it just debugs at a slower speed. So if you want to control the speed of the operation, when we're doing large data processing, okay, everything will be processed at, you want to see what is happening at each and every step, then you can do a slow step. So it comes with a 1x speed to 4x speed, I think. Yeah, 1x to 4x. So yeah, 4x speed. Okay, by default it calculates with the inbuilt speed. If you want to do it at a smaller pace of execution, then you can use the slow step option. Okay, so if you enable this particular option, your code will be executing a little slow when compared to the actual execution. Then we have an execution trial. Execution trial is going to be another wizard that will be happening, which will show you a kind of if you set up an execution point, then you can only while debugging this particular stuff will be enabled. Okay, so when I'm running the debugging, this particular stuff will be executed, this particular step will be visible. So what this particular step will do is, it's kind of a wizard which will tell you, okay, whether the activity succeeded or whether there's an error. You'll just see the trail of information, that will be available. This is what we have done. From this step we jumped into this step. This is not similar to call stack, but this is something that will be showing all the inbuilt information that is there. With this activity, you will be able to see, okay, what and all were the variables, what were the information, so that the trail of execution will be shown. So that is where the execution was thrown. If the execution, which means on an overall, you will be able to see what and all the picture you got from the execution, from the debug operation of this particular project. Okay, so that is your execution trail. Highlight elements is nothing but what elements you want to get highlighted. So when during debugging, what will be happen is, you can do a highlight element, so it will highlight all the error elements. So wherever it is, that particular container, it will be highlighting. So that is your highlight element. And you can do a log activity. So log activities is nothing but in the output panel that will be displayed. Okay, if you say log activity is enabled, so it will just do the tracing of each activity, and it will just enable, it will just show you in the output panel everything that it is doing. Okay, in case debug is only available for the studio, you will not be having it for the production code, right? So you will be able to see what is happening. So it will be there in your output panel. Okay, so you can do this particular settings in your there is a robot window settings that you will be able to do in your UiPath assistant. There also you can go and set it up. So this particular thing will allow you to actually set up your where you want to go and log. You want it in the output panel, or you want to put it in a log file. There is an inbuilt, so if you click on this, there will be the log files. Okay, so here also you can go ahead and see where the information, what information you want to store, right? And then continue on exception. So continue on exception is nothing but similar to your ignore and continue. So the same thing, if you enable this, even if an exception is thrown, it will just continue, because it's just debugging, right? So it will allow you to actually continue with the exception. If you want to see what is the error, you want to retry the same option, and you want to do it again and again, so that time we do a continue on exception. Okay, picture in picture is something like it's something like a pipeline something. Okay, I'm not sure what exactly this is, because I have not used it. A picture in picture is something where you can do both the execution and debugging together, I guess. Okay, in the same session. So that is what we do, a picture in picture, but I have not used it multiple times. Maybe I can see what is the definition and I can give it to you. Okay, this option also gets enabled when we are actually, so let me do a stop. It will show both the things in the same window, I guess. That is what it will do in the same session. That is to my understanding, but I'm not sure. I don't see anything. I'm not sure what is this. Maybe I can see what is the definition and I can give it to you, because I have not used this and I have not seen this. If any of you are already using the enterprise edition, I have not personally seen this. I guess I have not at all noticed it, whether it is there or not. Okay, I have not used this, so I'm not very really sure. I'll tell you what is the okay, see, there is, when I enable the picture in picture, I think I've stopped it. It's still running. There's multiple sessions that will be opened. See, is not enabled in your computer. Some kind of a session capturing that we do. Not session, your, in case you have multiple libraries that you have, and your multiple libraries are reusable components. So if you have libraries in your in your particular project, if you're using reusable components, you can use this picture in picture mode to actually debug your libraries as well as your project in the same session, in the same execution panel. That is what, to my knowledge, I know it as picture in picture, but I actually do not know what is the actual meaning. Okay, so that is the thing. And anything else I missed in the debug? Slow step execution trail will show you actually it will capture all the trail of information. What is the execution that we are doing? So when you're doing this particular, when you're enabling this particular thing in the output panel, you'll be able to see this is your execution trail. So what happens at each particular step? After this, what happens? So that is your execution trail. Usually we do not use this. Usually the step out and the step over or the step into itself will be enough. Okay. Highlight element is going to be highlighting all your errors and all the elements that you're going to do. Continue on exception means wherever you have exceptions, it will just ignore the exceptions and it will automatically continue. Okay. Log activities, again, will just log the activities and it will give you a display of the actual activities that you're going to get. Okay. So it will just log every information, it will just log. If you don't have this enabled, it will just log the information that you have actually said, right line. Okay, otherwise it will not log the extra information. But here, if you enable log activities, everything will be logged. Okay, so this is what we do in the debug options. Okay, so even if you have a breakpoint, important certification question, even if you have a breakpoint here, and then, so I have a breakpoint here, and I have debugged as a developer, and I've also moved the code to production. So will the code stop in production or in the orchestrator when we deploy it? Will the code stop during this particular stuff? No. Debug or the breakpoints are only captured only in the UiPath Studio. So if you run it as a developer only, it will be captured. It will not stop your execution if you have deployed your code and if you are running it in the end user's machine. Debug has no relevance when it is going outside the studio. Okay, so that is what usually will be asked in your certification. I have a breakpoint and I have I have installed or I have deployed in the I've made it to go live. So what will happen? Will the code stop at this particular point? No. Debug is only restricted to the UiPath Studio. Okay, so only if you open your code in the studio, then it will be working. If you don't open your code in the studio, then debug option will never be there. Automatically the project will be running without the breakpoints, right? So that is what is the overall picture.